The Case of Rosa Peral. Vinuela, a body in flames. A love triangle typically leads to no good, with all involved parties inevitably suffering as each one becomes dependent. The very emergence of a new participant in a relationship signals trouble in the couple's interaction. Yet some believe that monogamy is a thing of the past, advocating for relationships where one is not limited in the number of loved ones. Such was the belief of our protagonist today, who shattered the lives and destinies of the men unfortunate enough to be close to her. The case of Rosa Peral Vinuela caused quite a stir in Spain a few years ago. This woman easily entered into relationships, manipulated men by playing with their feelings, and then got rid of her tiresome lovers using harsh, sometimes radical methods. Intriguingly, she worked in law enforcement and often engaged in workplace romances. Rosa was blessed with attractive looks, which she used to her advantage. She had been in an official marriage, was the center of an intimate scandal, and was simultaneously engaged to 2 different men. However, these adventures were not enough for her. She dared to commit a crime against a weary fiancé, attempting to pin the blame on her ex-husband and a lover. The most horrifying aspect was that her own child witnessed this appalling act. Rosa Peral, the early years. Rosa Peral. Vinuela was born on October 15, 1985, in a suburb of Barcelona, becoming the 2nd child in her family. She grew up in a modest household that had migrated from Andalusia in search of a better life. Her mother, Maria, was a homemaker dedicated to creating a cozy home environment and raising the children, while her father, Francisco, worked as a security guard. Rosa was raised alongside her older brother, Paul, with whom she was very close. Those personally acquainted with her described Rosa as sweet, kind-hearted, and friendly. Neighbors spoke highly of the Peral family, considering them a united, strong, and happy household. In school, Rosa was a good student. She wasn't necessarily at the top of her class, but was diligent and persistent, always striving for high grades. She was also active in sports and dreamed of a career in law enforcement. After graduating from high school, she enrolled at Pompeu Fabra University in Barcelona, while simultaneously preparing for the exams and tests required to enter the police academy in Avila. Rosa was strikingly attractive and possessed a powerful charisma, which attracted many admirers from a young age. She skillfully leveraged her allure. During her college years, she worked as a waitress in one of the popular nightclubs, earning a decent salary and tips that allowed her to pay for her education independently. At that time, Rosa was dating a young man named Ruben Carbo, who served in the Barcelona City Guard. He helped his girlfriend prepare for the competitive examinations at the academy, a talent detection test, a multiple-choice exam, and an oral interview. Although Rosa didn't pass the physical test on her first try, her perseverance paid off, and she was eventually admitted to the academy, where she underwent professional training. Peral specialized in general law enforcement activities. She quickly advanced in her career, was highly valued at her service, and her salary allowed her to live comfortably without wanting for anything. A valued employee, a stellar wife and mother. Soon after graduating from the police academy, the young woman married her beloved Ruben. The couple had a modest wedding attended only by their closest relatives and friends. The newlyweds moved to Barcelona, where they soon welcomed 2 daughters, one after the other. At work, Rosa was regarded as a responsible, disciplined, and promising employee. Her attractive and approachable appearance often led to her participation in social media videos broadcasted on local television. In these videos, she encouraged residents and visitors of the city to behave lawfully and with integrity. She even gained some popularity, with people sometimes recognizing her on the street. Rosa was successful in her career, respected and valued as an employee, and at the same time, she was a loving wife and a caring mother to her 2 children. She had an impeccable reputation, inspiring genuine admiration and even envy among those around her. However, no one could have imagined the double life she was leading until one incident. An intimate scandal and the collapse of a reputation. In early 2011, Rosa's colleagues began receiving emails containing photographs and videos of a personal nature. The images showed the married Peral engaging in intimate moments with her former partner, Junior Inspector Oscar Leffs, at their place of work. Outraged by her lover's actions, Rosa immediately filed a complaint with the police, demanding compensation for emotional distress and strict legal action against the perpetrator. However, it proved impossible to establish that Oscar was indeed the one who sent out the photos and videos, though Rosa had no doubts about it, and he avoided any repercussions. Nonetheless, both employees were demoted and transferred to different departments for their inappropriate behavior. Moreover, the distribution of compromising materials did not cease, with not only colleagues but also friends and relatives of Rosa receiving them. A serious scandal erupted, and Rosa's previously impeccable reputation was shattered. The situation had a negative impact on her work, family life, and relationships with colleagues and friends. The young woman was acutely aware that she was being judged by everyone around her, and her actions became one of the most discussed topics. Furthermore, some expressed their disapproval of her immoral actions directly to her face. Rosa's character began to deteriorate rapidly. From a friendly, sociable person, she turned into someone perceived as harsh and even spiteful. However, many rightly considered this transformation a defensive reaction to the bullying and condemnation she faced. Surprisingly, despite such a scandalous and resonant ordeal, Rosa managed to maintain her marriage with Ruben. Yet, the trust between them was irreparably damaged. They stayed together for almost another year and a half until a new romantic interest entered Rosa's life. Another workplace romance and professional misconduct around mid-2012. It became known about Rosa's new romance with another colleague, Albert Lopez Ferrero. The couple spent a significant amount of time trying to keep their relationship under wraps, but between 2011 and 2012, they became involved in several incidents related to the abuse of their official powers. During the investigations into these incidents, the partners and lovers protected each other, which allowed them both to evade any disciplinary actions. It's worth noting that Albert was reserved, shared little about himself, and didn't make close friends among his colleagues. He was seriously into boxing and had a quick temper, which sometimes made him very aggressive, often to the detriment of those who happened to be near him at the wrong time. For instance, in 2011, while he and Rosa were patrolling the streets of Barcelona, Ferrero got into an argument with an immigrant from Senegal who was selling goods on the street without the necessary permit. Instead of taking the vendor to the station, after a brief verbal altercation, Ferrero physically assaulted him, causing severe injuries. However, during the subsequent investigation, Peral defended her lover, claiming that the victim had attacked him first and that he was merely defending himself. Another similar incident occurred, and in 2012, a suspect that Rosa and Albert were supposed to bring to the station mysteriously lost his life during the arrest. The investigation led nowhere, and the partners insisted that the fault lay solely with the deceased himself. Eventually, their version of events was accepted, and the case was dismissed due to a lack of evidence of any wrongdoing. As for the relationship between the two, it could be described as sporadic. The lovers grew closer through their work together, but their passion ebbed and flowed. Albert showed little interest in Rosa beyond physical intimacy. Their affair didn't progress but continued for several years without ending. It seems that both were content with this arrangement. Divorce and a new love triangle. When Rosa and Albert's relationship was no longer a secret, Ruben finally decided to divorce his unfaithful wife, realizing she would never change and would continue to seek other romantic encounters whenever the opportunity arose. The couple managed to avoid public scandals and bitter confrontations, but their parting could hardly be called amicable. Ruben soon entered into a serious relationship with a woman named Antonia, who quickly found common ground not only with his daughters, but also with his ex-wife. Rosa often called Ruben's new partner, sharing her personal disappointments and professional troubles. Antonia listened calmly, offered comfort and even advice. For Antonia, This communication was a sort of assurance that Ruben had no lingering ties to his ex-wife and that their relationship was truly over. Regarding custody, the daughters stayed with their mother, but Ruben was allowed to see them any time and take them home for weekends and holidays. After the divorce, Rosa chose not to continue her relationship with Albert, feeling it was leading nowhere. However, she soon started a new romance with Pedro Rodriguez, who had long shown a keen interest in her and had been actively courting her. Little was known about Pedro. He was born in Barcelona in 1979, where he spent his childhood and most of his adult life. He also worked in law enforcement, albeit in the transportation department, so their professional paths rarely crossed. At the time he met Rosa, Pedro was married and raising a 5-year-old son with his wife. Yet, Rosa's allure was irresistible to him. Consumed with thoughts of her day and night, he didn't hesitate to leave his family as soon as she reciprocated his feelings. Adding complexity to the situation was the fact that Pedro was a longtime friend of Albert's. When news of his romance with Rosa became public, the ex-lover was baffled. Driven by a painful jealousy, he began to harass Rosa, demanding explanations for her actions. To defuse the situation, Peral told Ferrero that the connection between her and Rodriguez could never match the chemistry they had shared over the years. This way, she implied to her former lover that she still harbored certain feelings and physical attraction towards him. The resumption of their intimate relationship seemed inevitable, as a definitive end to their saga had yet to be declared. A double engagement, Rosa and Pedro seemed to be living more than a blissful life together. Along with Rosa's children, they settled into a spacious home in a nice neighborhood of Barcelona, traveled often, appeared everywhere as a close-knit family, and seemed genuinely happy. Feeling ready for the next step in their relationship, Pedro proposed to Rosa with a beautiful ring, and she joyfully accepted. The couple started planning their wedding. Around the same time, Rosa began secretly meeting with Albert. Typically, they spent time together in hotel rooms on the outskirts of the city to avoid being seen. Rosa even complained to her lover that Pedro didn't quite measure up to him in intimacy. She also mentioned Pedro's difficult personality and expressed doubts about her future happiness with him. In January 2017, Albert, previously indifferent to serious commitments, unexpectedly proposed to Rosa, presenting her with an expensive ring. Remarkably, she accepted his proposal too, wearing the ring secretly from Pedro. The fact of her double engagement greatly flattered Rosa, and she even bragged about it to her closest friends. Soon, Pedro noticed changes in Rosa's behavior, and her frequent absences led him to suspect. Moreover, Rosa found it increasingly difficult to justify her meetups with Albert. This strained Rosa and Pedro's relationship significantly. They argued often, and Rosa's increasingly aggressive and unpredictable behavior alarmed Pedro, making him fear for his safety. Eventually, Albert disclosed his affair with Rosa to his former friend, sparking yet another scandal. Rosa admitted to the betrayal but assured Pedro it was a one-time incident, driven by threats and pressure from Albert. Pedro pretended to believe her, not wanting to end their engagement, still hoping for a future of happiness together. However, from that point on, he began to monitor her every move, or at least that's what she told everyone. Pedro's fate-sealed Rosa claimed that her fiancé's jealousy was unbearable. He scrutinized her phone calls, monitored her social media interactions, and restricted her from spending time with friends. This behavior infuriated her, and any affection she once had for Pedro had vanished. Instead of confronting him or ending the engagement, Rosa devised a drastic plan to eliminate her troublesome fiancé. She decided to end his life, with Albert playing a pivotal role in this scheme, ready to be the fall guy if anything went awry. In mid-April 2017, Rosa confided her plans to her lover. She outlined that Pedro needed to be removed in such a manner that Ruben would appear to be the primary suspect. This was Rosa's way of retaliating against her ex-husband, who was still fighting for custody of their children. Notably, at this time, her fiancé was undergoing rehabilitation from a complex spinal surgery, during which a titanium plate had been inserted. The conspirators meticulously prepared for their heinous act. Rosa purchased a disposable phone, which she planned to dispose of immediately after the deed was done. They also pre-discussed the details and alternative plans in case any part of their original scheme proved unfeasible. Lovers and accomplices. On the night of April 30th, Rosa prepared a farewell romantic dinner for her fiancé. They spent the evening together, with Pedro blissfully unaware that he had less than a day to live. The following day, Sunday, they went shopping together, visited Rosa's parents, and then headed to her ex-husband's house to pick up the girls who had been staying with him for the weekend. At home, Rosa fed the children and then sent them to their room on the second floor, asking them to stay upstairs. The exact moment Albert entered the house remains unclear, as the accounts from those involved have repeatedly changed and contradicted one another. It is known that Rosa drugged Pedro with an unidentified substance mixed into a water-diluted medication he was taking post-surgery to alleviate pain. Shortly after consuming this mixture, Pedro's reaction became significantly delayed. He struggled with spatial orientation, moved slowly, and had poor cognitive function, making him an easy target. The exact method by which the lovers ended Pedro's life remains unclear, but one of Rosa's daughters, who ventured downstairs amidst the noise, claimed she saw her mother push him down the stairs. However, the court did not take the 6-year-old girl's words into account. Regardless, after the act, the couple placed Rodriguez's body in the trunk of a previously rented car to dispose of it later. There was also speculation that the man was still alive at that moment. The accomplices then drove the car to a deserted marshland outside the city, placed the body in the driver's seat, doused everything in a flammable liquid, and set it ablaze. Rosa thoughtfully left Pedro's phone at the scene, and upon returning home, she called it several times and sent messages begging for forgiveness and asking him to come back. Remains in a burned car. The morning after the incident, Rosa called her father, Francisco, sobbing into the phone, claiming that she and Pedro had a major argument. She told him that Pedro had ended their engagement, stated he no longer wanted to see her, and drove off in his car without specifying his destination. Rosa also reached out to several of Pedro's close friends and relatives, inquiring if they had seen him. She tearfully narrated their dispute and separation to everyone. For 3 days, there was no word from Rodriguez, but on the afternoon of May 4th, a young cyclist riding outside the city stumbled upon a burned vehicle containing human bones. He immediately reported his find to the police, and soon an investigative team was at the scene. The car contained severely charred human remains that were unidentifiable. However, a titanium plate recently implanted in the man's spine helped in identifying him. This implant had a unique serial number, which was used to confirm the remains were Pedro's. Based on the car's location and the nature of the fire, investigators concluded that the vehicle had been intentionally set ablaze, and the driver had either been prevented from escaping or was already deceased at the time of the fire. Given these circumstances, the case was classified as a deliberate act of ending a life. An investigation was launched, the details of which were kept confidential until the trial. Investigation and suspects. Once the remains were identified, police officers were dispatched to Rosa's residence to deliver the tragic news of her fiancé's fate. She attempted to feign shock and grief, but her expression quickly reverted to an indifferent calm as she responded to routine inquiries. Her demeanor was oddly composed for someone who had just been informed of her fiancé's demise. Rosa refused to go to the police station, claiming she had no one to watch her children, and also denied the officers' entry to her home to avoid alarming her daughters. However, she immediately suggested to the officers that her ex-husband, Ruben, could be involved in her fiancé's demise, driven by jealousy. This accusation promptly placed Ruben among the primary suspects, but he soon provided a solid alibi, having spent several days in another city with Antonia, visiting her parents after picking up the girls with Rosa. Rosa herself became a suspect next. Her remarkable calm and detachment raised eyebrows. Yet, aiming to stay ahead, she voluntarily went to the station and suggested her former lover, Albert, as the perpetrator. According to Rosa, he had been harassing her, demanding she break off the engagement with Pedro to marry him instead, and had become enraged and threatening after her refusal. When police arrested Albert as a suspect, he immediately began testifying against Rosa, implicating her as the mastermind and executor of the crime. He disclosed that it was Rosa who had orchestrated the entire plot, including drugging Pedro to incapacitate him, making him an easy target. Rosa was arrested the same day based on this revelation. Trial and sentences. During interrogations, the lovers provided wildly different accounts of the events on that fateful evening. They desperately tried to shift blame onto each other. Their stories were inconsistent, and they struggled to accurately reconstruct the sequence of events. The investigation lasted nearly a year, with law enforcement painstakingly attempting to piece together the crime scene. It became clear that the pair had premeditated the act, indicating it was intentional and planned rather than spontaneous. Despite this, the woman maintained her innocence. She claimed that Albert showed up at her and Pedro's doorstep that evening, armed and irrational. Upon seeing her enraged ex-lover, she fled upstairs, fearing for her daughter's safety and attempting to protect them. At this moment, she alleged, Ferrero carried out the act on her fiancé. Mobile phone data played a crucial role in the investigation. Despite Rosa's belief that they had covered their tracks, investigators discovered she had communicated with her lover using disposable phones on the day of the incident. Additionally, Albert's personal phone was tracked near the location of the burned vehicle on the night of May 1st. The trial of the accused pair didn't begin until February 2020. Despite the woman's attempts to portray herself as a victim, Ferrero's attorney argued that his client only assisted her in disposing of the body, suggesting she was the mastermind behind the entire operation. He described Rosa as a cunning manipulator, capable of using others for her own ends. Antonia, now raising her and Ruben's daughters with him, also testified, reiterating that the older daughter witnessed her mother pushing a bloodied Pedro down the stairs. However, the child's statement was not taken into consideration. Yet, Rosa accused her of lying, claiming Antonia simply wanted to see her imprisoned for as long as possible out of jealousy. In March 2020, both suspects were found guilty of premeditated ending of life and concealing evidence of the crime. Rosa was sentenced to 25 years in prison, while Albert received a 20-year sentence. Additionally, they were ordered to pay nearly 100,000 euros in moral damages to Rodriguez's family. However, as it turned out, all of Rosa's assets were registered in her parents' names, rendering her financially insolvent. Following the verdict, both convicts made numerous appeals, each maintaining their innocence. However, the Supreme Court of Catalonia rejected these appeals, leaving the sentences unchanged. The aftermath for those involved Rosa's parents, despite the guilty verdict, never believed their daughter was capable of committing such a heinous act. Now, the children's biological father, Ruben Carbo, officially serves as their guardian. He raises the daughters from his previous marriage alongside his wife Antonia, with whom he also has a son. Notably, Ruben has always allowed the girls to maintain contact with their maternal grandparents. Interestingly, following Rosa's arrest in 2017, she was only able to see her daughters nearly 2 years later, in the spring of 2019, under the supervision of Ruben and his current wife. However, he has since refrained from bringing the girls to prison visits, believing the environment adversely affects their mental health. In 2022, it was revealed that Rosa, while incarcerated, attempted to hire someone to end the lives of her ex-husband Ruben and Antonia. Her plan was uncovered, preventing the crime. Rosa claimed that desperation to see her children drove her to this drastic measure. She believed that if Ruben were no longer alive, custody would revert to her parents, who she expected would not obstruct the girls' visits. As for Albert, while serving his sentence, he decided to pursue a law degree, enrolling in a Spanish university. He also dedicated himself to learning foreign languages. The case of Rosa Maria Peral Vinuela inspired a mini-series titled Body in Flames. which premiered on Spanish television in the fall of 2023. Additionally, her story became the subject of a documentary film, Rosa's Ribbons, portraying her as an innocent victim.